Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honoured to speak to two gentlemen. The first one is before me, as you can see on screen. His name is Yanbo Li. Yanbo, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Brian.
Nice to meet you, mate. So, if you're not sure who Yanbo is, he is the co-founder of OnChain, which is very impressive in itself. But the real reason we're here today is to talk about his position as the founder of the NKN network, which stands for the New Kind of Network. We also have another gentleman who is on the audio right now, all the way from California, and that is none other than Chen, or Bruce Lee. Great name. So Bruce, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Brad, and great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you as well. So Bruce is also a co-founder of the NKN networks, and he has a lot of experience behind him, and that's what we're going to talk about first. So Yanbo, I've read a bit about you. You're a very impressive person. You know a lot about blockchain, and these are some of the reasons why. You are what they call an open source guru. You manage on-chain brands. You've involved heavily in the office. You've come from significant knowledge. I guess you come from a background in Stanford, which is substantial. It's a very reputable university, and you have more than 10 years of experience in R&D. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on the channel. And tell me a bit more about yourself.
That's 10 years. My main background is focused on the network domain and also on the blockchain domain. So I always think about how to integration them more close and make each other better. So we just think about in the network domain, we could be tokenization or blockchainization the network to make even better decentralization network for us. So basically, we think about that. In the current domain, there are already some core information technology resource be tokenization or be blockchainization, like the Bitcoin or Ethereum. They just focus on the computing resource.
I see. So just to clarify that, so you're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum. They just focus on the computing aspect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And also, we say that some system like the fine core, IPFS, and also SIA, and also storage. They just focus on to make the distribute storage tokenization and integration with the blockchain system.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt you. So you mentioned Filecoin and SIA as some examples of focusing on that distribution aspect. So there are different compartments you're mentioning, but you say?
Yes, but in the network domain, how can we make the network resource, especially as the network connectivity and network transmission capability to integration with the blockchain system. So we'll try to make this work together and introduce a brand new methodology, which we call the Cellular Automata, to make it.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that. So just to clarify, you were talking about the Cellular Automata, which is quite a complex thing, and if you're not familiar with that, we understand, and we will unpack that. But just for the moment, you can see that Yanbo Li has some serious experience in his, in his background. So Bruce, what about you, mate? Can you tell us a bit about your background? You're in California now. How did you come?
Right. I've actually been working in quite many countries. So I actually educated in Australia. So
That's great.
I can relate to your accent.
Fantastic.
So I actually spent quite a bit of time working in the telecommunication industry and also many innovation projects together with Yanbo. That's where we worked together for almost 8 years. So I always want to see how can we Uberize the telecommunication business, and how can we do the Airbnb to the network industry, because there's lack of innovation and the business model had not been changed over the last 100 years. So that's something we want to do, but we don't want to make another monopoly or centralized kind of entity to do that. And blockchain just come around, and Yanbo have both experience. I thought that's a great idea. Let's put them together, and we'll go for that $1 trillion telecommunication business.
Sounds very interesting, and also given that you both have such experience in the domain and coupled with now blockchain. It was also very interesting because currently there's not a lot of literature out on NKN, and we're going to be excited to read more. But what we do know, firstly, is that there's some serious components of technology being developed, and one of them is the Cellular Automata. So can you tell us a bit about, you mentioned that before, Yanbo, can you tell us exactly what that refers to and why it's important?
Exactly. Yeah, Cellular Automata already exists for a long time, but it's never been used in the network domain or in the blockchain domain. So we're just inspired from a book, which the name is A New Hypothesis. This book is written by the Professor Stephen Wolf, very famous people in the in the domain who is the author of the mathematics. So he have been proposed a new idea to construction or build the complex system, and really some principle about how to set up a complex system and use some brand new methodology in there. So basically, the most powerful tool he used is the cellular automata.
I see.
And from the idea, we got some very good character that perfect match with the network we want to set up. What's the character of the cellular automata? It has something like that. The cellular automata is fully decentralization, and the cellular automata we call CA is the equal pairs and running in parallel. Meanwhile, the network built by CA is dynamic, self-organized, and self-evolution.
I see.
And the most important one, the rule of the cellular automata is very simple. So that means we could be implementation it from engineer point of view. So we just found some common sense between the cellular automata and the network we want to build in. So we just introduce this from new methodology to set up our network. And the network, because the network we want to build is the pure decentralization and efficient, equal, and robust. So that's just a perfect match with the CA.
I see. So Bruce, can you tell us a little bit more about the cellular automata? Because obviously it's very complex. There's no question of that. But why is it so key to the overall NKN plan?
Right. So I think to scale in a large network, which is both fast and efficient, you need an algorithm that is very simple, but you can converge globally and actually can generate a consensus deterministically. So those are kind of characters both for the networking topology as well as blockchain technology. That's fundamental characteristics, right? So that's the reason we look at the academia and all the research, we find the perfect match between what cellular automata can do and what we want from the networking and also blockchain point of view. So very simple rule, right? For example, if you're a node in the system, you have 5 neighbors. All you need to do is know what's your state, what's the state of your 5 neighbors, and you can make a local decision that eventually will converge globally and deterministically. So that's kind of one of the beautiful things that we think the CA can give us a tool that can be easy to implement, but also give this trustness that a typical blockchain system will provide.
I see. So if we talk about applicability in that context as well, why is that of value in the real world? How can that translate into some sort of relevance for use, as a use case?
Yanbo, do you want to start?
No, I just have something to the previous question about why we're using cellular automata in this domain. Another reason is that me and Bruce have been working for the mesh or P2P network. I think 10 years ago, we have lots of experience in the traditional methodology or technology to set up the P2P network. But we think that in the traditional technology, there have some problem in there existing. It could not be fixed by the normal way or normal technology. But say could solve such problem perfect. So
yes. Yes, and I think it's a very important thing. We can actually continue and discuss that further, I think, because in your notes and also on your website, you go into detail explaining some of the challenges. So some of them are things like privacy, network fragmentation, selective propagation, the various aspects. So can you tell us, what were some of the challenges of the current centralized models that prompted you to want to make this kind of blockchain?
Yeah. Let's start it. So one very important problem is that network fragmentation. In currently internet, there already split to subnet by some for custom reasons about that. That means that the information cannot be exchanged or freely flow between them. That means the network connectivity is not be equal between them. So another is about net neutrality. Just as we know, the network layer or transmission net is controlled by some very big company. So they could be set priority for the packet what they wanted. and we cannot control that. But we hope the network layer is equal for everyone and its openness. But if we can't change the network layer to a decentralization layer, it's very hard to do that.
I see.
That's another reason. And also the network is inefficient because the network resource is imbalance between different people or different nodes. Some people have a very wide bandwidth and they could be connected most of the nodes of the world, but some people just have very narrow bandwidth and they cannot reach some nodes for certain reason. So is there any possible to share such a resource, the network resource, to each other and also introduce a very good incentive scheme? That's very important because in current network we already know some technology that want to share such a resource. But if we haven't got a very good incentive scheme, it cannot be running in a long term.
Yes, but just to go across again, obviously we're going to talk about that incentive scheme, but we're talking about the challenges presented by current models. So Bruce, can you tell us a bit more about some of the other challenges you can think of that really prompted the need for this network?
Right. So one of the things Yanbo touched upon was the kind of the boundaries or the artificial walls in the internet today, right? So one of the ideas using VPN. But the problem with this VPN is the topology is fairly static. So the network traffic pattern is very, very detectable. Right. So because after a while, by analyzing the network traffic, you know exactly which one is VPN node, which traffic goes where.
Right.
But by adding this cellular automata, which can introduce a degree of randomness. So basically, every node can be that so-called VPN or relay node. So there's nowhere you can actually build a wall because you cannot build a wall in the ocean. That's kind of the analogy I tried to say, where CA can bring value for really protecting your privacy as well as give you unlimited degree of freedom to connect to the rest of the world.
I see. So you're really addressing some of the problems that even VPN presents.
Correct.
And that's obviously really significant because currently, and obviously both gentlemen, you would know that VPN is something that does predominate, is predominantly used in many Asian countries, particularly in China, where there's reasons for trying to circumvent certain firewalls. So this is going to be an issue that people will be able to utilize in a very functional and practical way. Is that right?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the use case. But I think our main kind of focus is really kind of how we maximize the efficiency of a network by sharing the extra capacity. Because we think even in a developed world, like in the US, I'm in California. In some areas, I have lousy coverage by one of the carriers, but right next to me, Yanbo might have a super good coverage from a different carrier. So one of the optimal solution would be I do a mesh or Wi-Fi P2P connect to Yanbo and from Yanbo and hop onto that much better network, right? So those are kind of things that is not limited by the underlying infrastructure, by the kind of artificial or business model limitations. So we want to address that to really kind of become the Airbnb of the bandwidth base.
I see. That is very interesting. So essentially you're going to be able to interoperate. Is that correct? Bruce, is that you'll be able to interoperate between various facilities, between different blockchains and provide this network specifically to increase bandwidth and improve access.
Right. Okay. So we basically want to be the third pillar of the three things, right? So we eventually, if we are successful, we could be the networking layer for Ethereum or for Bitcoin. Because today they based on P2P, peer-to-peer networking, right? Which is very good, but I think we can do better. So we can be that network layer for the other blockchains as well.
I see. So Yanbo, is it correct in saying that you are not blockchain specific by any means, in that you are in many ways akin to protocols I've heard about and read about and discussed about, whereby some of them can interlink or interconnect with various different platforms even. So really, you're not beholden to any specific blockchain. You are your own design and can be applied globally via different blockchains. Is that fair to say?
That's yeah.
So your scope is really infinite in where it could be used across the globe. As blockchain evolves and as it becomes a much more steadfast technology that's applied, certainly I would imagine that your network can be used wherever the blockchains exist.
Well, I try to do some two phase. In the beginning, we will deliver a better network infrastructure which could be used by other system based on that. So, and also we just introduce a good incentive mechanism in there, so we could be building a brand new, better blockchain system based on that.
I see.
That's a true step in there. Yeah.
So you're giving people a good reason. If we could go back a bit to your slogans, because I noticed it was advertised in your website that it says you're going to free the bits, you're going to rebuild the internet. So can you tell us a bit about what that actually means?
Free the bits just means we want to make the information or bits just exchange or flow free and high efficient. And rebuild the internet, we all want is that we want to build a decentralization network that controlled by ourselves, all of us. And also it could be a sharing and efficient, equal, and openness network in there. Because currently we have such a problem in the internet in there. So we think that by introduce good technology and good economic incentive scheme, the internet will be even better.
Absolutely.
Right.
And Bruce, if we could talk
Brad,
sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, if I may, I want to add on to top of that. So we do really see two steps, right? So in the beginning, we are protocol overlay. So we do not need to change the infrastructure underneath, but provide people with a free bits kind of experience. But long term, because of the incentive mechanism we built in, so there will be people who actually go about deploying free Wi-Fi network, not free, but I mean incentivized by this blockchain, or even the major carriers, like for example, the Trans-Pacific Undersea Cable Company, today is totally invisible to the end user. But because of this incentive plan, they say, oh, we should open our core router to all the users in the world. So why don't we use our extra capacity to do other things than we just provide to Telus or provide to Optus or Telstra, right? So then you can start building the new infrastructure based on these incentives. So that's kind of a medium to longer term vision, but we do have that in our kind of slogan as well.
Right. And I wanted to ask you both as well. Obviously, on-chain has been integral in developing your knowledge, but how useful has it been to integrate some of the skill sets, that even the technology itself from your experience in on-chain into your plan? Has it been of benefit? Has there been any cross-collaboration as well through the skill sets and knowledge you've built in the on-chain project?
Okay, so you just asked the question about the relationship with the on-chain?
Yeah, because obviously you're a co-founder in on-chain, which is very significant and cannot be overlooked. It's so important.
I have a lot of experience from in the on-chain and especially in the blockchain system. But the NKN is a brand new project, and it's just it's just introduced lots of new technology and new methodology in there. So we just hire and join together much more people from all the community, open source community, and all the university who have interested with us project together to make this new project. And on-chain, on the other side, we have some cooperation both on the to get much more talent from the community because it's open source community, and also where we try to make a compatible smart contract in there, because in the contract layer we could have lots of them to common and it can be sharing each other.
Absolutely.
And meanwhile, I think Neo will investigate us in the future. And
let's talk about that a bit moment. Bruce, can you tell us a bit about this? Because just for those people who don't know or aren't familiar with on-chain, it's a very important component of the ecosystem that also houses Neo. So the on-chain system is a permission design. It also facilitates with consortium blockchains, with public blockchains, and even the private sector as well with the public-private blockchain. But what is fascinating is what underpins this is a business protocol, the DNA. So Bruce, just how imperative has it been for to have these skill sets and knowledge of on-chain in relation to potential business correlations?
Yeah, I'm the code designer and also the code developer of DNA. But DNA is the open source platform. It's based on the Apache, right in there. So DNA, which means anyone could use it. And anyone could contribute on it. It's open source blockchain system. So in the beginning, we also will be, maybe build some things or set up a daemon or prototyping based on DNA. But in the long term, the NKS methodology is totally different. So we have to build it from scratch based on our previous experience in there.
So
yeah.
there's not,
so
sorry, Bruce,
I think the competence is definitely important, right? Because the DNA is one of the kind of the originally written code for an entirely new blockchain. So if you look at the projects out there, I would say 95% of the project, they just run on Ethereum. And there's very little, they are more the application of the blockchain, not so much about the infrastructure itself. So the tremendous competence from the core team, including Yanbo, who is actually one of the top 3 committers in the DNA project, is that they use this kind of really originally written code as a base. And then, of course, with the new CA and also other innovations, I think we'll build actually not only a better network, but also a better blockchain technology as well. So I think that's really significant. Yeah,
I agree, and I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Bruce, because we do often see almost a copycat design of some dApps that come along or utilize certain in terms of code. And what's so important is we see the robustness of the code of the NKN network, and that's certainly come forth with Yanbo's experience. So when people are considering the NKN, they are certainly able to learn from this interview and hopefully from others that you are looking at the original source of code development, of the original source of complex code that was required to build out this network. It didn't come from other sources. Is that fair to say?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, we already have a lot of very talented engineer here, and we have some, colleagues from the very big company in China, like the Baidu or Tencent. We are just very experienced in the network domain and also in the blockchain domain, and they will work together with us. And also we have some research from the very famous university who focus on the cellular automata.
Right. Which university is that?
Which university? Chen could be introduced about our team member.
Right.
We have a few core researchers. I think they are either MIT or UC San Diego, University of California, San Diego. We have a Princeton PhD. So we have a few. So we said we almost half researchers, half developers. But of course, at the end of the day, we are all developers. But we have a few PhDs which doing fundamental research, and that's the reason why the white paper become very nerdy and difficult to understand sometimes.
But we appreciate nerdy because it means quality. It really does. So if we could talk about now your features. Some of the features that are disclosed in your website are things like openness, self-evolution, as you've talked about, Yanbo, your routing dynamics, your truly decentralized by structure, and your self-organized nature. Can you tell us, just addressing some of these points in a nutshell, what are these features and why are they important? If we start with openness, why is that so important?
Yeah, we just want to set up the internet or the blockchain system to be open for everyone, because we don't want the blockchain system or internet could be set barrier for some reason, because the hardware or software or some political reason for that. So we want to open to everyone. Everyone could access and share the resource and to access whatever they want in the network.
Okay.
And efficient. Yeah, that's the one way.
Right.
And it's fairness. It's fairness for everyone. We don't want to set priority for some different people or some different company there. We just want the network is the bottom infrastructure for everyone. We don't want to set priority to promote someone in there. So we want to make it fairness.
Yes.
So meanwhile, we want its self-evolution. That's very important in our point of view, in our system. And the cellular automata have some very good characteristics that follow some very simple rule. It could be evolution by itself to some direction, but whether it's evolution to a good direction or bad direction, it depends on the rule we just choose. So we just in our algorithm, we need to careful to choose the rule to make the network to evolution to the good direction, which means the connectivity in the network is much better and have multiple paths to reach each other, and also the traffic is high efficient in there. So that's what we want in there.
I see.
And truly decentralization is, I think, everyone know about that. We hope that by introducing the technology and also the good incentive mechanism, everyone could earn themselves nodes to share the bandwidth or the collective capability. So that means there are no center like the routing or some switch in there that everyone should go through in there. which means the network is not reversed and it could be blocked. You just set up some block in the king switch, the network doesn't work.
I see.
So if that multipass and everyone join the network to switch for each other, the network is truly decentralized and it's not controlled by oneself, by some people, or by some government, or by some company either.
I see. Now, if we talk about that, now they're very interesting factors. But Bruce, if you could address this, how does it relate in terms of the real world of economic value and enterprise? What is from the position of I guess a business, let's say, what's the benefit of the NKN, and how can businesses benefit from it?
Right. So I think, Brad, you want to know the business benefits, not so much about end user. I just want to clarify.
Yes, that's right. So obviously we talked about, we just mentioned about the value of decentralization, and that's really clear how valuable that's going to be. But if we talk about it from, a business standpoint, why would someone from a business perspective choose the NKN?
Right. I can answer from one point of view. So, for example, today, like in Australia, you have probably 3 or 5 mobile carriers and maybe 2 or 3 fixed line carriers, right? So the barrier to entry to the networking business is very high. So nobody really even try, right? And but with this kind of NKN system, I think maybe even mom and pop shop or some utility company or some real estate developer, they will put on some networking just to serve their community and have a good return on investment, right? So which is not very feasible today, but it will be feasible with NKN. So you will really encourage more supply, I would say, with the networking business. Today, I think the demand is definitely there, but the supply is very limited. So we want to balance the supply and demand in the networking system.
Right. Well, that's being really clear. Well, Yanbo, if you could tell us a bit about the goals, because there's something that's clearly mapped out in your website as well. What are some of those fundamental goals that you do want to achieve by asserting this network in the blockchain space?
Yeah, just the way just mentioned about. So the goal of the NKN is that it wants to connect everyone and any place, and we want to secure the network neutrality from the network layer, and the network. What we want is always scalable. What that means, in current blockchain system, their network is I don't think some blockchain system network is scalable. It's just very limited to some nodes or person could join. We hope that the network could be scalable, which means it could be join maybe millions or even trillions devices can join this network.
Right.
So and meanwhile, we hope that NKN, just what we mentioned for several times, it's efficient and it's routing dynamic.
So just to touch on that, because it's a very important concept that we often talk about in various blockchains, and that is scalability. Can we talk about that numerically? So in terms of numbers, how is your scalability in your test designs now, as you've been, I guess, can you tell us specifically?
That's very important for us. So at the beginning of design, we just do some simulator to try to prove our system could be allow how much nodes could be running in there. So at the beginning, we just introduce about 10K nodes in there and do some simulation. It works very well. Okay. That means we are trying to build this network based on that. But in currently, like Bitcoin, it just have thousands of nodes in there, in fact. So that's 10K is a very good start point. And meanwhile, we believe that the Cellular Automata have a very good feature about running in parallel and the decentralization. So which means it could be scalable for a very big net number node could be joined that.
I see. So really you're addressing some of the serious problems we currently have with mass scaling, with at the scale required for your network.
Yeah, in this network, it's not only just focused on some minor nodes could be joined. We hope every nodes could be joined, because every nodes need have the capability of network connectivity and transmission.
I see. So that's a major goal, is interconnecting all the nodes. Bruce, could you tell us a bit about a goal that we haven't mentioned? There's quite a few written out. I'll give you some examples of efficient and dynamic routing selection. We've talked about that. But even the tokenized data transmission, those aspects. Or could you tell us a bit about or some of the key goals, or one perhaps that you can think of that we haven't mentioned?
Right. Yeah, one of the key goals I would say is because our algorithm is so simple, so I would envision the future that all the smartphones and IoT devices will run this protocol, because the overhead to run it actually is quite low, right? And also because the system can really scale and to reach consensus both locally and globally. So my vision for the future is, yeah, I hope everybody will have a device in their hand or in their pocket will run our protocol. That's
Fantastic.
my vision.
And so we talked about Ethereum, but obviously it's important to broach another very important platform, that's Neo. And obviously, from my experience and constant talk of that platform, it's relevant in that Hongfei, or Da Hongfei, has been a serious investor, obviously, in the ecosystem, and certainly has interest in your work as well. Is it something you've considered, is to expand and utilize Neo in some way in the future?
Yes, that's very important. Just Hongfei mentioned in the work for Neo in the future, especially in this year, one very important thing is about decentralization that is work. Because Neo just currently have a limited node to join, so they want the network to be more decentralization. So we also hope that our technology, just as we mentioned, we could deliver a decentralization network that could be used by other blockchain systems. Maybe we could be co-work in this point together to do some exploring or adventure in this. Yes. That's one thing we could. Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating how you mentioned that even to address the scalability issue is you're looking at it through layers. So as you said, Hongfei is also considering how to improve scalability. Just recently at the DevCon, he mentioned something very important. He said that by 2020 he hoped that Neo would achieve a very ambitious goal of 100,000 TPS.
Yes.
Without sharding. So clearly, as you said, to achieve these kinds of mammoth goals, you have to have something like you to even support it.
Yeah, it's a different technology solution in there, because Neo should be considered compatible with the province data and province solution in there. But NKN is a brand new blockchain system, so it could be introduced something that people level to try and from the scratch, from fundamental to set up the system.
Right.
So what is very important is about integration with the blockchain system. So we just mentioned about to sharing the network resource and sharing the network connectivity in there. So how to integration with the network or the blockchain system about the consensus layer. So we want to just to make a useful proof of work. What that means? In current Bitcoin, the proof of work, the deliver or the result is nothing. It's just waste of an energy in there.
Yes. So just to clarify that, so that for the audience, is what Yanbo is talking about is the consensus algorithm, the proof of work model. It's mentioned throughout the literature on NKN as well, but there is a distinction between the type of the proof of work model of the original blockchain, and that is Bitcoin, with its very energy, it's high use of energy. It's very wasteful in its energy design, as opposed to what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. So we just mentioned about to sharing the network resource in there. So when I think about that, we could make good mechanism is that some people just prove the work they do in the network domain. That means I just do some relay or transmission for some other people. That's what I do. And if I could prove such a work to all the community, I can get the reward. I could be the miner and get the block, generate the block.
Yes.
So that's what we mean, that it's a useful work. And the result is people happy to be saved. Yeah.
I see. So it's a much more, it has greater utility in its design, because many listeners who are familiar with the different types of algorithms may have been concerned about the POW model because it has strong correlations with the very first design. And we've seen it evolve now to proof of stake, to DBFTs and so forth. So what would you say to those people who are concerned that that you are a proof of work model by design? What would you say to allay those concerns?
Yeah, so for the new consensus mechanism, I think one is that it's useful and we want it high efficient, and also it's very important. It should be scalable because lots of consensus mechanism is very good and looks good, but it's not scalable, which means it cannot allow many nodes could join. That's a very serious problem. Even in the BFT also have such a problem.
I see. So you're looking at a very provable consensus. So Bruce, would you like to add to that? Because obviously the POW is beautifully simplistic in its design. So would you like to elaborate on that POW comment?
Yeah, I think there's some different kind of things we can use to calculate how you prove your work. So Yanbo mentioned about how many packets you help to relay, and other signals we can use, like how many connectivity you can maintain simultaneously, how long you stay online to provide this service, and how many hops you use to reach destination, etc. So those are the kind of signals we combine to create this proof of work, which is useful. So I think we'll have the algorithm you just mentioned. We actually have a comparison and the kind of overview section in our white paper.
Fantastic.
And also we have detailed description how we can combine some of our algorithm with some of the existing algorithm to get this proof of work done.
And it sounds like it's very competitive.
This I have an available example. You know about the fine call and the IPFS.
Yes.
That's maybe from some point of view it's similar, because in the fine call, it's trying to introduce a useful proof of work, which named the proof of storage, which means I proof the storage for some people, then I could get the bonus, or I could get the reward. But in our system, we just focus on the network, which means I just prove I have been relayed or transmitted for some people, I could get the reward. So they're from some point of view, they're the same. Yeah.
So you're network driven. And in terms of that, let's talk about your inspiration as well. You mentioned before about Stephen Wolfram with that source of inspiration, with a new kind of science. So can you tell us a little about how that eventuated?
Yeah, new kind of science is very complex. It's about the new science. It's different with the traditional mathematics or physics.
I see. Well, we don't have to go into complexities of it, but obviously what is important, I suppose, to address, Yanbo, is that you had a source of complex mathematics that really drove your interest in NKN.
Yes, we get some methodology or inspired from the new kind of science to get some idea to design a system, which means we try to design the system in a more organic, in a more natural ways. Through the cellular automata. It's a different with the currently design a complex system in there, because we think that if you design very complex system in there, the system is not reversed, and maybe there are lots of problems in there.
Sure.
So in the new kind of science, there are some key principles in there. One is that in the computation universal, it's richness, which means you don't need to invent a new solution. You just need to discover them, because there are lots of model or simulation in there. You just found them which suitable your goal and to make your network or your cellular automata to be involved towards the direction you wanted.
Right.
That's one thing. Meanwhile, it have a very good character that the large computation irreducibility, which means you need to run each step to get the result. You cannot get the result directly from the beginning.
Right.
That's just like the blockchain generate one step by step.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very much with what we wanted. So I get lots of inspired from this science in there.
I see. So it's that incremental approach that you're referencing. You don't do everything holistically, but it's just graduated through the premise.
Yeah, and also we have a lot of detail in the white paper, so
yes,
you can.
I can't wait to read those. Yes, I'm really excited. Let's talk about something else. Bruce, could you address this? I noticed in the literature that I have read about the missing element, and it's interesting because there's mentioning obviously the things we're talking about with the proof of work, with the proof of transmit, the relay, the proof of storage. So if you could tell us just really simplistically, what is this missing element that you guys are providing with the NKN? Bruce.
So the missing element, just to try to clarify, so are we talking about 3 elements of compute, storage, and networking, or something else?
Yes. Well, in the literature, in the PDF you can download, it has 3 sections, and it's interesting because it alludes to this idea of a missing element. And what's provided is a proof of work as an example, proof of transmit and relay. And then there's the proof of storage from examples like Filecoin and CR and storage. So there's a suggestion that there is this key missing element that the NKN affords. Do you happen to know?
Right.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think we have lots of the because I believe now I think the blockchain is still in the infrastructure kind of platform space kind of era. So I think lots of the fundamental technology have not they kind of have not been solved yet.
Right.
So I think relatively speaking, the computing I think it's in better shape. So Ethereum and Neo both fall in this space with the smart contracts. Right?
Yes.
So as a universal computer or distributed computer, and then in storage, we do really like IPFS and Filecoin. So I think they have done really good work there as well by Juan. But in the networking space, we see some smaller projects and which have more narrow focus. Some of them are very much focused on Wi-Fi mesh, and some of them are specifically focusing on the kind of VPN, future VPN. But we never see any projects really address the bulk of the problem. I mean, the networking layer, right? So that's the reason why we think we are actually kind of trying to chip at this kind of big chunk of work that has not been really tackled yet.
I see. So it's really about filling the gap of the network issue.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also I think it's also because it's difficult, right? So the communication network is a very complex system. There's lots of monopoly there, and there's millions of different devices underneath. Unlike your computer, which is very much similar, it's either PC or Mac, right? So it's simpler. But the networking infrastructure is super complex and with legacy products or legacy business model. So to do any innovation on top of that is really difficult, I think. But we still want to attempt, and that's the reason. But the reward is also bigger as well because we are really talking about $1 trillion business, communication business.
Yes, well, let's talk about that a bit more, Bruce, for a moment. Can you tell us a bit about the size or the magnitude of the market you're trying to tap into? Just how big is this industry?
Yeah, I think if you include all the service providers and the networking providers, I think I saw some of the statistics is about $1 trillion per year.
Wow, so 1 trillion per year.
Yeah, you just add up everything, right? Like in Australia, you have Optus, Telstra, and all the ISPs and etc. So that's Australian telecom market and the US, everything together. Globally, I think it's $1 trillion annually. So we're not talking.
So that's a lot more than that when you talk about it in the bigger numbers. If it's 1 trillion annually, I wanted to ask you both as well. How, obviously, given your interoperability, your applicability to various blockchains in the future, how are you also going to redress the issue of current models that provide and centralized models that provide people with access to communication? Obviously, you're addressing this market. So can current and existent real-world models now also utilize your service in some way, or are you replacing them?
I can start, Yanbo, maybe, and then you can add when you're ready.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. So that's the reason we have two steps, right? So the first step, we're not going to rebuild the infrastructure because I think this is against the wall. So we want to start with the protocol layer. So we'll work with the existing infrastructure, but providing with a few things, right? So more reachability. So for example, if in the past you cannot reach nodes or get certain service or access certain server, now you can. So that's a clear benefit. Secondly, you can actually share your extra bandwidth to earn some additional tokens or whatever, or gas, you name it. So once you have a network effect, and more users start to use it, and also, so today the communication business is very clearly separated. You're either a consumer of the communication service or you are a provider of the communication service. We want to blur the line, right? So have more people not only consume the bits, but also provide the bits, or not really provide the bits, but help relay the bits. So once this kind of dynamics start to change, I think at a certain kind of tipping point, there will be business people, enterprises, individuals jumping and say, oh, actually, I can make money in this kind of ecosystem by actually building out some new infrastructure. So then I think we'll have a much more interesting thing as a second step. The infrastructure itself will be changing.
I see. And just in terms of the infrastructure, Yanbo, as well, because we've often seen projects in the past whereby they've applied and utilized the infrastructure of centralized markets. For example, we've seen examples in the telecommunications company whereby they utilize the government structures, the infrastructures that exist. So that's what I'm alluding to here as well. Is there any means in which you can utilize infrastructure that's already in place?
Yes, I think at the beginning our system will be coexisted with the available or currently system in there because you don't want to, just to rebuild them from the scratch. And just as Chen mentioned, if people get the incentive from the system and they get the benefit from the system, they think, okay, it's good. I could be set up my own system or network infrastructure to benefit from that and also benefit for other people. So I think it's a long-term plan, and people will accept such of a technology and also such of incentive. And just like the Bitcoin miner,
Yes.
the miner just they get higher equipment, high-end equipment to get the miner to get much of a computing. We think about that. People get incentive, and they could be improve the equipment to supply better connectivity and also transmission capability to other people.
Yes.
And finally, they could be have enough power to be competed with the company or something like even before. Yeah.
I see. So just in terms of, let's go back to your code now, in terms of your GitHub code and your in relation to just how expansive, I guess, the technology's become. If I were to go in and explore the GitHub itself, how developed would the code be?
Okay.
How robust would it be?
Currently in the GitHub, there are not too much of code about the NKN because NKN is still in the white paper phase, and we introduce some new things. The new things haven't been implementation in the world, so have a lot of code available. But if you just browse the NKN's GitHub, there already some code existed because this code is that we have been developed in the past 2 years or past even before. Most of them are related with the network and also related with the blockchain. That's maybe some part of them will be used in the NKN system. But I think for most of them, we should be writing them from scratch because there are no any reference or some code we could copy in there. But fortunately, we have a stronger engineer team in there. We just make everything clear and design it very well. Then we could code in, I think, very, very quickly.
I see. So you can have a lot of support with that. Now we've talked about quite a lot today. But if we move it back across now to your ICO, just to address this, could you tell us a bit about what position you're currently in with your ICO evolution and what the plan is in the near future?
Yes. This question, because our finally decision is not to be published yet, so there are not too much detail. But currently there are already too much of founder want to support us, and some people even they didn't even say the white paper. They just send the money to us. That's I really
so obviously you're very popular. Given that you have an excellent reputation, you have a direct conduit to a very reputable ecosystem that is Neo. So you have a lot of interest, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but we just not want to get much money because I don't think the money could be solve the problem.
All right.
We need a solid team and solid solution in there. So we just want to give time to us, and we want to deliver the solid white paper, the design and the coding to everyone.
I see.
And we want to make the system to be meaningful and the real implementation, but it's not just exist in the paper or in the PPT.
I see.
That's what we want.
Thank you for explaining that. So Bruce, if you could elaborate on this, because it's very important that people understand access points for investment, obviously. So, we've had a phase of the ICO already passed. Let's talk about the prospect of crowd sales and the prospect of exchange access. Is that going to be happening soon?
The team is working really hard. And but I think, like Yanbo said, now I would say 70% of the energy is really working on the technology, the white paper, and how to have a really good two things: good technology, good economic model to incentivize the network, so it will be fair and for long-term success. And I would say 30% or even less, we are looking at the kind of different funding models. Like Yanbo said, I think we got lots of interest from the institutions and also kind of angels in a way, because Yanbo has been in this circle for the last 2 years. So we are not trying to make a quick buck by raising lots of money on fluffy PowerPoint. So we actually try to reduce the scope, but actually try to have a combination of solid kind of white paper and code, with some moderate funding, and that will take us to the next level.
I see. So essentially, you're really focused on building out the tech, building out the quality, and not so focused on, it's much like what Yanbo said, and that is the pump and dump model or the hype and that often we see in various projects. You are not so focused on and worried about the immediate economic gain, but more so the longitudinal support system you put in place for a great blockchain protocol.
Okay. Yeah, well, we believe you build well, and the money will not be a problem. So we were quite confident about that. Right?
Yes. It's a good indicator also if you have a lot of people knocking on your door to invest. I think that's a really good sign. Now that puts you in good stead for a very exciting year. So let's talk about that in terms of, let's say, 4 key points, because it's outlined that you have 4 of them, in fact, in your roadmap design. So what's ahead for the NKN?
Yeah, we have planned to set up a system, especially the test rate in the next year, in the Q1 of next year. So that's our plan in there. And because it's a very big project, so we want the test rate to run it well to make sure it's robust and it's also no problem in there.
I see.
So after a while, we launch the a high efficient network mainnet. And after the test rate be launched for a time. So that's the plan. So roughly we need about 1 or 1.5 years to make sure the system is running well.
Okay, it really is a long-term project in that sense compared to the average, plan you see now.
Yeah, compare with some, some project it's a long time, but compare with the project that what we set the goal, it's still very, short time to do that. So we'll have lots of work to do in the next year.
Yeah, so it sounds like you really do. So what about you, Bruce? What's some key points of the plan in the roadmap?
So I think, like Yanbo said, our reference is kind of like a little bit better quality projects like IPFS. So Juan did like 2 or 3 years of solid work before even the ICO, right? And even the ICO, I think they're in different stage of completing the different aspects of it. Right. So I think the next year, I mean, between now and first quarter 2018, we need to put in lots of good effort to get it working and scalable and stable. So I don't have any new data point or new roadmap, but I think that's what we want to work towards.
It sounds excellent. Well, clearly we've learned a great deal about the NKN. It's an exciting new protocol that's going to interconnect all kinds of blockchains around the world at some point in the future, no doubt, led by a very experienced team, has a lot of experience in on-chain itself, which is a very technologically complex design and architecture in its own right. Led by some very experienced people, Yanbo Li, Bruce Lee. Thank you so much for your time. Gentlemen, is there anything you'd like to add as a final point before we finished off this interview today that you'd like to say about the NKN and just why it's so good?
Okay, so basically the NKN, we want to set up a decentralization network that could be incentive much more people to join it, to make the network to be more equal, open ease, and benefit for everyone. And no barrier in there. That's what we wanted. Yes.
I see. What about you, Bruce?
Yeah, I think we are addressing the kind of the third and the last pillar of the internet kind of infrastructure, and that's the networking. So I think we are definitely working the right space. So that's kind of the we are really addressing a large enough market. So lots of upside. The second one is I'm really confident because the core developers from the team is so strong. So I think we are definitely stronger than, I would say, 90-95% of the project there, purely from developer point of view.
Well, let's talk about that because I didn't mention that. My apologies for not doing so before. But just how big is the team? That's a key aspect of any great project. How big is the team currently? You clearly have excellent developers, as Bruce has said. So Yanbo, what does it look like if I went into the Beijing office?
Yeah, we have about 10 core developers and the research in there, but they are all over the world. They're located in the US, in China, and even some people in Sweden, in Europe. But all of them are very have a strong personal capability in there because we just think that more people could make a better system. We just hire very people that think we have common sense in there and also have lots of experience in the network domain and also in the blockchain domain. So when we work together, and we believe we could make a reliable and efficient system what we wanted.
Absolutely. Well, on behalf of all the listeners, it's been absolutely a privilege to speak to you both today. I've learned a great deal. No doubt many of the listeners as well have learned about the new kind of network, that we've learned about how valuable it's going to be potentially as it unfolds. We've seen your experience, not only you, Yanbo, with your knowledge of as a co-founder of OnChain, but both of you are clearly founders of this network, of the NKN. So once again, on behalf of all the people around the world who are fascinated by blockchain, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to working with you and following your journey as you develop into a real-world project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brand, and thank you for all the audience listening to us. And if you have any question or want to get some update, you could visit the nkn.org, and you can send an email or join the Telegram group to get the update in there. Yeah.
That's right. And also, guys, there's Telegram, there's Twitter. And Bruce, would you like to just finally add any final points?
Yeah, thanks, Brad, for the opportunity. So you are the first social media vloggers we actually talked to. So yeah, so it was great to start. And so stay tuned. And once our white paper's out, and give us lots of feedbacks. And also, we'll be happy to come back and do another session.
That'll be fantastic. Yeah. I can tell you I can't wait to read that white paper. It's going to be a really good read. And until then, thank you very much. It's the NKN Network. It's an exciting new venture and exciting things to come. Thank you both.
Okay, thank you.